Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, PhD, and this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving women who have written books that make a difference for people while at work. I am a professor, and when I'm not doing that, I am speaking, writing, coaching, and teaching high-achieving women who have written books how to make a bigger difference, have more impact, and more purpose with their books. Okay, let's dive in. Hello. Before we dive into today's episode, I've got some exciting news for you. We just launched our new podcast website. That's right, and this is where you can catch up on all our episodes and find exclusive content and so much more. So head on over to leadershippurposepodcast.com, leadershippurposepodcast.com. I know it's a tongue twister, huh? Let me say it again. leadershippurposepodcast.com. And we are building it to the go-to spot for everything Leadership Purpose Podcast. So in the coming days, you'll see it grow more and more, but it's launched now. So go ahead over and check it out, leadershippurposepodcast.com. And for now, let's jump into today's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and that you listen into the podcast. It really means a lot to me that you take time out of your busy day and schedule and listen to the podcast. And it would be very helpful if you just go over and rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. That would really help us. Now, today, I'm talking with Elizabeth Borelli. Elizabeth is the author of the book, Breathe into Breakthrough. She is a certified life coach who helps growth-oriented people to manage negative thinking patterns, shift out of old habits, and move from stuck to unstoppable. She spent the last decade studying habit change, starting with health and wellness. And she teaches that we have a silent influencer inside of us. And until we learn to tune into the subconscious dialogue of the mind-body system, our thinking brain can't keep us on track. So she teaches us with her life-changing process that she shares with individuals, teams, and organizations. Welcome, Elizabeth Borelli.
Thank you, Dr. Robin, for that very thorough introduction. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Well, I gave this sort of formal introduction. Why don't you tell us in your own words, anything you want to share about yourself and then tell us about your work?
Well, I am, like you mentioned, a life coach, certified life coach, author, and trainer. I'm also a yoga teacher. And just in 2021, I did my yoga teacher training. And I think that piece really helped me with the mind body to understand how the mind and body work together. And so a lot of people think of yoga as, this woo-woo thing that people just go and do in their, the yoga class or the gym and then, leave it at that. But I have found that the practice of yoga, of mindfulness, of meditation, of breath work, all of these things help us to get more in touch with our inner thoughts and feelings and emotions. And by knowing, by tuning into these things, we can learn all the different ways that our patterns and even our thinking patterns, behavioral patterns might be keeping us stuck. So as a coach, I've spent years working with a lot of people who are stuck. So, I know you have as well. We have a plan or a goal in mind, but just, getting started, feeling like we don't have enough time, the self-doubt, all the things that come up as obstacles, all of those are often, not all, but for the most part, they're driven by inner feelings of self-doubt or limiting beliefs. And so I've discovered that mind-body practices like yoga are a great way to become more aware of those. So we know, is this really is this really what's going on for me? Do I really not have enough time? Do I really not have enough expertise? Or is this the voice of inner fear or self-doubt or something that's coming back even from childhood that's, kind of bringing all these obstacles up for me?
Yeah, I would imagine who doesn't have those kinds of thoughts. So this
Right.
is this is important work to help us think through that and work through that. All right. So now we've heard about the work and what you do. How did you come to do this work? I mean, it's something like I say, I think everybody needs. So how did you come to do this work?
I started as a workplace wellness coach over a decade ago because I learned a lot about the food system, and I did a nutrition certification, online nutrition certification. And I learned that so many of the things I thought were healthy habits actually were not. And so I realized how misinformed I was, and a lot of other people are. We live in a culture that's really focused on diets and weight loss and following this eating protocol or that one. And a lot of times these are really marketing driven. And so when you look at what's really healthy, it's not as complicated as we think. So my work then was about getting the word out, and I wrote a book 10 years ago called Beanalicious Living. And it was about how to incorporate more healthy whole foods into your diet, and how, it's not as hard to do that, or it's not as hard to cook from scratch as most people think, and just ways to kind of turn your diet, nutrition, and health around with healthy whole foods eating. So I did some of that for a while. I was doing some coaching when I lived in Santa Cruz. And during that process, I was connected with someone who introduced me to an opportunity to start working as a career coach. So then I moved into career coaching, working for an organization, got my coaching certification then. And so I'd gone from wellness coaching to career coaching. And so kind of was seeing the same things, like, I don't have time to eat healthy. I don't have time to, exercise. I don't have time to look for a new job. I don't. So it was kind of like the same, I guess. I don't want to use the word excuses because that sounds really negative, but the same obstacles that people were coming across, no matter what they were trying to do that was involved uncertainty, change, doing something different, maybe felt risky. So, what I noticed is that these same obstacles were coming up and holding people back. And a lot of it was really around the uncertainty of change, the stress and anxiety that brings up for people. And that's when they default into these, kind of sabotaging patterns, if you will. So, we hear a lot about imposter syndrome, where people, high achieving people are worried that they need more information or more expertise, or they need to work harder in order to be seen as legit. It's that kind of mentality, I think, that underlies a lot of the obstacles people face in transformation and in reaching their goals. It's all these limiting beliefs come up, whether it's around, not having the ability, the motivation, the, stamina, whatever it is, that their feelings of not enoughness are coming up for them. They're typically always driven from the same place, fear and anxiety.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. You think the fear and anxiety, it's the same root, no matter what the outward expression is? For example, whether it's I don't have enough time or I don't know enough, or whatever the presenting problem or reason is, do you think the foundation of it, the fear and anxiety is the same?
Yes, and I think it's our, natural default. Our brain always wants to save energy. Like the brain uses so much. I think it's like, I can't remember the percentage, but like 23% of that. I'm just throwing that out there, but it's a significant amount. It's more energy. Our thinking, our brain uses more energy than the rest of the body, like by a higher percentage. So every time we think, cognition, planning, the executive functions, those are all really energy intensive. So your brain just wants to go back onto default, like, the subconscious habit mode that you can just go along in your regular old patterns and no thought is really required. So that's where kind of your system defaults to and is most comfortable at. So all of these, energy intensive processes, they're hard. And so I think, to answer the question, there may be some initial, like, okay, motivation, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to overcome that fear. I'm going to overcome that self-doubt. I'm going to go for it. And, the person moves into achieving their goal. They're going forward. They're making it happen. They're doing it. They're staying with their program. And then, something happens, maybe something shifts in their life, or maybe they just get busier with work or overwhelmed with family life. And then they kind of default back to that old pattern. And then they think, I was right. I couldn't do it. That, I just proved once again that every time I try to set a goal, I end up failing. And so they don't maybe understand sometimes, and this is where coaching is so helpful. It's like change is never linear. So you're always going to go up, down, up, down. It's that pattern of one step forward, or hopefully two steps forward, one step back, where you're gonna have a little setback, but that's part of the process, and knowing that you have to fail to succeed, kind of thing. So even if you do overcome that fear of failure, when there's a setback, a lot of times without the right support, people just give up and end up feeling worse as a result. And I think we can look to the diet industry for proof of that. I think that's a really good illustration of what that looks like and why people feel so stuck when it comes to transformation.
That makes sense. Yeah, and the diet one is universal. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, no matter what our particular goals are in terms of health, eating and what not to eat or how to eat, I'm sure everyone can relate to that. Okay, so now tell us about the book. Tell us the title of the book again and the premise of the book.
The title of the book is Breathe into Breakthrough. And once again, it was during my yoga training. I'd been doing yoga for 10 years before I did the training, a lot, as a regular yoga practitioner. And, I did the mindfulness, I did, a little bit of tried to meditate. And during the time, all my years of doing yoga, I always heard, you need to meditate every day, or, you should do this work every day, try doing this every day. And I was like, there's no way I can do that. I did one time sign up for this. It was 100-day class where I meditated every day for 100 days. And it was a long time ago. It was when meditation or online programs just started coming out. So I
Mhm.
think I paid $99 for this program, and it was like this pre-recorded thing, and it was out of the UK, and it was like 10 minutes every morning. They sent you this meditation and you did it. And I did it, and I was like, wow, this really is great. I feel better. I feel, more grounded, more focused, more able to control my emotions, all the things you associate with mindfulness. And then, eventually I stopped doing it and forgot all about it. And so then when I did my training, they said, stop trying to make your meditation perfect. If you do it daily, more than perfect. So, like, just stressing the importance of a regular, everyday building a habit versus sporadically doing, 30 minutes of perfect meditation a week. And so I really listened to that. And so I did make it a point every single day since then. And that was like 3 years ago since I started. And I still do it because I learned that the habit building that I've been trying to teach other people for all these years, it's really important to make it a daily practice and start it. And the reason that I think breath work is so important, and starting with in working this daily habit piece into anything you want to change is so important, is that it's helping us to be more mindful and self-aware. And that's the big missing piece in transformation, because that defaulting back to old habits,
Mm.
that inner critic that comes up and says, I told you couldn't do it. That was really like the voice of your, mean second grade teacher saying, you're always going to be a failure, or whatever it was for you that's coming up, that's really undermining your ability to believe in yourself. By being self-aware, you're able to see that for what it is. Oh, this isn't reality. This is something that's been nagging me from my past, but it's not part of my life now. And it's not, doesn't need to direct my actions or behavior at this point in my life. I'm choosing something different. But you have to have that level of self-awareness in the moment to do that. Otherwise, your default, your self-conscious, is going to be driving the bus. So the breathe into breakthrough is about forming that daily habit of mindfulness. So it's meditation, it's mindfulness, it's easier to do with breath work because it gives you something to focus on rather than meditation, which for most people is really hard. Breath work is a form of mindful meditation, but it's just a more approachable format for most people to begin with. So that's really the premise of the book.
Yes, yes. I appreciate that because all those things you talked about, I had moments where I was consistent with my meditation, and then there was times when I was not consistent, but now I'm back to being consistent. And so hearing you talk about developing the habit of it, it makes a lot of sense. It resonates with me. And to not worry, like in my case, sometimes I try to measure it, not anymore, but by minutes, like how long. And if I didn't do it at the length that I said I was going to do it, I felt like, oh, that, I kind of missed the mark. But yeah, just letting go of that and just creating the habit. And I do find my days are so much better on the days that I meditate, which is most days. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Just bringing that mindfulness into, that intention to be more mindful and aware into your
Yeah.
day. Like if you can do that first thing in the morning, it really does make such a difference.
Yeah. I know for sure it does for me. I just want to interrupt the episode for a moment to ask, is your book ready to be turned into a successful online course? Well, to answer that very question, I took the time-tested process that I use for turning books into successful online courses, and I created a free checklist that you can review and check off so you absolutely know the ways in which your book can be turned into a successful online course. So just head on over to createmasterfulcourses.com, createmasterfulcourses.com, and get your free checklist there. All right, now let's get back to the episode. All right, so now let's talk about your role as an author. Well, you have many roles. Let's talk about your author self. What would you say has been the greatest joy in your role as an author?
I would say when my work connects with people. So, hearing somebody, I went to a retreat about a month ago, and the woman who ran the retreat asked me if I would contribute to the gift bags for the other retreat attendees. And she asked if I would donate a book. And so I did. I donated my book to the people who were attending the retreat, each got a copy. And it was like, oh, this is a little embarrassing because people were reading it. Oh, you're the author, I'm not super big fan of being in the spotlight like that. So yeah, but it was good. People read it, and one woman said to me, thank you. This was exactly what I needed to hear right now. And when people say things like that, that's why we do the work we do.
Yes, yes, you're making a difference. It's a physical representation right in front of you that you're making a difference. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's wonderful. So now, what would you say has been a challenge in getting the book out into the hands and the hearts of others?
The writing process, the publishing process, can be really confusing for people. And so I'm right now writing my third book. So I've had a bit of experience with this. where the first time I started, I worked with a hybrid style publisher where they took my manuscript, they edited it, formatted it, helped me do the cover, create a cover, got it into print, and set everything up for me. So that was one process where I was very happy with the quality of the book. And I didn't get a lot of help with, or really any help with promotions, but that was okay because I had, my platform that I was promoting it myself on. And that was good. I would say I would call that a positive, great experience. My second book, I worked with someone who was very focused, coaching agency that was very focused. Their focus it was on getting you into the number one author category or top bestseller category on Amazon. So they helped me with the formatting, helped me with the cover. I was not as happy with the actual book itself, the printed product, as I was with the first one. I felt like overall the quality was different. I did achieve that bestseller status. I got a lot of reviews. So I got more visibility online. But I think the focus on the quality of your book is really important. And so I think that when you choose a publisher, or hybrid publisher, self-publishing, or if you get picked up by an actual publisher, then there's different things that you're going to get from each. So maybe one is quality, maybe another's exposure. And depending on what you want to do with your book, I think that asking those questions when you're interviewing, if you're working with hybrid publisher or someone, a coach, asking those questions, what is the quality of the book? What do you do to help with promotion and distribution, or those kinds of questions, just depending on what your goals are with the book. So you know exactly what you're getting and it matches what your needs are.
Yes, that makes sense. That makes sense. Now you say you're writing your third book. Is there
Yeah.
something that's in you that just compels you to write these books, or how does that happen?
Well, I think this time it really was. Like, I think last time I was very just focused on, I wanted to write a book to help specifically women, because I work with a lot of women as a coach, as a career coach. And I really wanted to help women overcome a lot of these limiting beliefs and kind of strategies around professional development for women. And then I just got so inspired by the mindfulness piece. It shifted the whole book. So I started writing one book. I was really having a hard time getting any traction with it. I was having a hard time differentiating from what was already out there. And I didn't want to just go out and say the same thing. And then when I found breath work and I had that inspiration, that was the kind of, I guess, motivation for that book. And this book, I was not planning to write another book, but I took a trip to Italy in June and I got so inspired by, of all things, the difference in the food culture there. So, as somebody who was really focused on wellness and diet and nutrition, and I went with my family and we stayed in Tuscany and stayed in a farmhouse where we were cooking. So we went to the grocery store in Italy. We started going to the Italian grocery stores and it's like, where's all the processed food? And how are people like eating all this pasta and gelato and bread all the time? Like, how is there focaccia everywhere and people look fit and healthy? And is this really true? And so I started doing a bunch of research, and that book just kind of like swept me away, that
Ah,
topic. And I was really inspired and really motivated. So that was definitely different than the first two experiences, which were, I want to write this book, and I'm going to, take all these notes and do all these things. This one was just like, I just got really caught up in that, or really engaged by that topic. And the more I learned about it, the more excited I got. And thinking about, as a coach, how a lot of times we're trying to help people to, redirect their behavior in ways that kind of seem not denial based, but maybe a little bit dogmatic in some ways. And, this Italian lifestyle that I was seeing was definitely not about dogma. It was more about enjoyment and abundance, and just a different conversation around food, and not even nutrition, because they're not even focused on nutrition or diet. They're just focused on enjoying food. And it's like, what would that be like? It
Sounds like a delight to me.
was a delight. It was a delight to write.
Yeah,
So it's in another editing mode right now, but I've got my manuscript outlined and I'm excited to see where it goes.
good for you. Good for you. And it sounds like something we all need. All right. So now we hear about the meditation, the wellness. Is there a part of you that is reflected in maybe a combination of your books or one of them in particular? Is there a part of you that is really reflected in and through the book or the books?
I think in all of them, I've really used my own personal experience. I struggled a lot as a young woman with anxiety and self doubt and all of these inner critic, judgment issues that so many women face. And so I always talk about, I always, reflect back on how I work to overcome a lot of these issues, or most of these issues, hopefully by this point. And so, really, I think I bring that sense of knowing, of really relating on a deep level to these feelings. And I feel like, I speak from a place of of having experienced everything. I talk about myself.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes
and
sense.
and I think as coaches, we just learn how universal these feelings are. And so many times we think it's just us. We think, we can feel so isolated and alone. And yet, as coaches, we hear these women that, are so accomplished and so amazing, expressing some of the same self-doubt. And you're going, I thought that was only me.
Mm.
And then when you learn how universal it is, I think it really is something that I'm inspired to speak openly about, because I know there's so many other people out there that don't realize it's not just them.
Yes, yes. And this podcast is for what I call high achieving women. Women
Hmm.
who are like the women you described, ambitious, professional, doing all the things. And on top of it, they've written a book, at least a book,
Right.
at least one book. And they're the ones that are responsible in their work and business and at home, and people come to them. And so I thought, well, who supports them while they're supporting everyone else?
Right.
So this is the purpose of the podcast, to help we support each other. So now,
Hmm.
given that, what's some word of advice you can give from any area of your life, work, or experience to the woman I just described?
I would say self-compassion, meeting your negative thoughts, your feelings like, oh, I wish I had done that, or I should have done that, your shoulds, all of those voices of the inner critic that come up with us, the regrets, the guilt. I mean, mom guilt, that is just so common these days. And so many working mothers experienced this. And I was taking a class recently in a master's training program I was doing in leadership. So for part of that class, there was a project, an assignment to go deeper into a theory that we had. And my theory was that women are experiencing burnout. And so when I dug deeper and did a little bit of research, I learned it was even worse than I imagined. And I, as coaches, we know these high achieving women are experiencing burnout. And one of the things I learned is that not only are women experiencing burnout, they're afraid to let other people know. So a lot of times they're acting like, they're keeping all the balls, juggling, and at the same time they're feeling like crap. So they look like they're doing it all, but they feel like crap. And so my advice to women who are, I mean, this really is an incredibly challenging, especially if you're juggling a family and career and writing a book and all these other things. It is a tremendous challenge and a tremendous amount of pressure. So, just being compassionate, meeting your shoulds, your regrets, your guilt, your misgivings with compassion is really the biggest piece of advice I could give people.
Yes. And it's such important advice and helpful, I'm imagining, to people who are listening right now. So, the podcast is Leadership Purpose.
Yes.
Do you think it's important for you and or people in general to have a sense of purpose in their work? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
Yes, and so I think absolutely it's important to have a sense of purpose in your work. And if your purpose is to make the world a better place or to just be really good at your job so you can help your company function more smoothly, or help, maybe it's to mentor people, or so maybe it's a kind of a giving back purpose, like a philanthropic purpose. That's great, or a values driven purpose. But I also know that just wanting to be successful financially is enough of a purpose for some people, and no shame in that. So whatever is driving you, finding what's driving you, whether it's, I want to retire at 60 and be comfortable for the rest of my life and be able to travel. That's as good a purpose as, I want to bring more happiness into the other people in my lives, or as a doctor, I want to cure diseases, whatever it is. I feel like knowing what's really driving you and your motivation, and it's different for everybody, I think that's absolutely important.
Yes, yes. And of course, I resonate with that. All right, Elizabeth, you've been so generous with your time. Now, before we tell people how they can get in touch with you, is there anything that you want to share that maybe I didn't think to ask, or something that just bubbled up on your mind right now? And if not, it's okay, but I just want to give you a moment in case there's something else you want to share.
I would just say, circling back to daily intention, if you can do it, even if it's just 2 minutes a day, just bringing that mindset, the self-awareness piece into your life every day is really going to make a difference. It's a really good place to start when it comes to transformation.
Okay. All right. Now tell people where they can get in touch with you so they can hear more and get your books and hear more about your programs.
So my website is my name, elizabethborelli.com, and lots of ways to connect there. So definitely check it out.
Okay. All right. Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing your heartfelt wisdom and expertise with us here today. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Robin. Take care.
Okay, everyone. And if you want to get in touch with me, I encourage you to send me a message in LinkedIn. I mean, I'm on all the socials, but I hang out mostly on LinkedIn. So send me a message. Let me know what you think about the episode. I'd love to hear from you at Robin L. Owens, PhD, at Robin L. Owens, PhD. And that's my handle across all the social media channels. And if you're an author and you're thinking about how can I get this book into the hearts and minds of people in a deeper way, and I'm thinking about a course, but I don't know if my book is really ready to be a course, then I have a new resource for you. Just head on over to my website, createmasterfulcourses.com, createmasterfulcourses.com, and get my checklist that you can just check off step by step, so you'll know for sure the ways in which your book can be turned into a successful online course. Okay, and until next time, this is Dr. Robin. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Dr. Robin signing off. See you next time.